Whispers travel fast inside royal walls, but danger travels faster. On a quiet morning meant to be ordinary, a single silver tray set off a chain of events so shocking that even veteran guards would later call it the day everything changed. How could something as simple as breakfast carry enough power to shake the monarchy? And why did one royal guard feel an icy warning in his gut, a warning that would lead him straight into a confrontation no one was prepared for? This is an emotional, unseen story of loyalty, rivalry, and a moment that nearly silenced a future queen. If stories from behind palace doors fascinate you, make sure you tap like, subscribe, and share. It helps more people discover these hidden royal moments, and it keeps us bringing you the most emotional, gripping stories every week. Buckingham Palace woke slowly, like a grand old orchestra tuning itself before a performance. Footsteps drifted through long hallways, silver clattered quietly in far-off kitchens, and warm light seeped through tall windows, catching dust like gold flakes floating in the air. The morning was calm, almost too calm. To most people, it was just another day in the oldest working palace in the world. But to Officer James Reeves, something felt ever so slightly wrong. The kind of wrong that lives beneath the surface, subtle but unmistakable. James had served the royal household for 12 years. 12 years of watching the patterns of palace life unfold with military precision. He knew which maid walked too fast, which butler hummed under his breath, which chef cursed softly when souffle fell. And he knew, better than most, that danger rarely appeared loud or dramatic. It usually arrived quietly, disguised as routine. That's why the moment he saw the servant carrying the breakfast tray toward the Princess of Wales's private study, the air around him changed. There was nothing unusual about the tray. Polished silver, gold-trimmed dome, white gloves. Everything was perfectly in place. But the servant, she moved differently. Her steps were clipped, too careful. Her shoulders stiffened every time someone walked by. Her eyes scanned the corridor the way someone scans for witnesses, not directions. James watched her closely. A new employee, roughly 3 months in. A hard worker, eager to please. But now, she gripped the tray like it was heavier than it was. Not because of weight, but fear. He stepped forward, boots tapping once on the marble. "Good morning," he said evenly. She jumped. Not flinched, jumped. "Oh, gee, good morning, officer." Her voice shook. The tray trembled with it. "That breakfast for Her Royal Highness?" James asked. "Yes, for the Princess Catherine. Her breakfast, her morning meal." Too many words. Too nervous. James's instincts sharpened. Something wasn't right. Not with her. Not with the way she held the tray, like a secret she didn't want exposed. He moved directly in her path. "I'll need to inspect the tray before you proceed." Her face drained of color. Is that necessary? When a meal goes to a senior royal, yes. Always. Her breath hitched. The antique clock in the hall ticked loudly behind them, counting the seconds of tension stretching across the corridor. She hesitated 1 second too long. 2 seconds too long. "Please step aside," she whispered. "She's waiting." "And I'm doing my job," he replied, calm but unwavering. The servant's eyes flicked, just once, toward the west wing. And James instantly knew. She feared someone who stood in that direction. Before he could lift the dome, another sound echoed through the corridor. Heels. Sharp, deliberate heels. The kind that announced power long before the person arrived. The servant froze. James straightened. And a moment later, Queen Consort Camilla rounded the corner. The morning light caught her pearls first, then the navy dress that fit her like armor. Her expression was calm, almost warm, but her eyes locked on the tray immediately. "Is there a problem?" Camilla asked, voice smooth, but edged like a blade. James felt the shift in air, the kind of shift that came right before storms. "With respect, Your Majesty," he said, "I need to inspect this tray before it reaches the Princess of Wales." "That won't be necessary," Camilla replied lightly. "The kitchen has already approved it. It is a harmless breakfast, nothing more." But James had worked too long to mistake reassurance for deflection. Camilla stood a little too close to the servant. The servant's hands shook a little too violently, and the Queen Consort's gaze kept flicking, almost imperceptibly, toward the dome. It's protocol, James repeated. Camilla's lips tightened. Officer Reeves, must we do this now? Catherine is waiting. The servant looked as if she might faint. Her breathing was shallow, frantic, the breathing of someone who'd been told something terrible would happen if she didn't obey instructions. James slowly placed his hand on the dome. I'll be quick. The servant's lip quivered. Camilla's jaw clenched. James lifted, and the world seemed to pause. A rich, buttery smell filled the corridor, the kind that belonged to a luxury restaurant, not a royal breakfast. Lobster, perfectly arranged. Steaming, glazed with herbs. For a split second, the servant choked on her own breath. James didn't blink. This is shellfish. Yes, Camilla said smoothly. A simple mix-up. The chef will be reprimanded. But James wasn't looking at Camilla. He was looking at the servant, whose eyes were wide with terror, silently begging him to understand something she couldn't say. Her Royal Highness, James said slowly, has a severe shellfish allergy. The servant dropped her gaze. Her hand shook so violently she nearly dropped the tray. I didn't know, she whispered. The order said chicken. I swear it said chicken. Who gave you the order? James pressed. The servant's eyes flicked, just for a heartbeat, toward Camilla. It was enough. It said everything. Camilla stepped in quickly. This is absurd. A kitchen error, nothing more. But James had seen sinister things disguised as innocence before. He had stopped threats no one else noticed. He had learned to trust what others ignored. And right now his instinct screamed. Someone wanted this tray to reach Kate. Someone who knew her allergy. Someone who wanted the consequences. Before he could say anything more, a door opened down the hall. Princess Catherine stepped out, serene and unaware. Cream blouse, tailored trousers, papers tucked under her arm, the picture of morning grace. She stopped when she saw them. Is everything all right? She asked. The servant burst into tears. Camilla lifted a polished smile. James felt the weight of a choice heavier than any he'd made in his career. Did he tell her the truth? Accuse a senior royal? Risk everything? Or stay silent and allow danger to slip back into shadows? Kate's eyes locked onto his, calm, trusting, unguarded. And James knew he would tell the truth, even if it cost him everything. Silence fell over the corridor like a heavy curtain. Princess Catherine stood still, absorbing the tension flowing between the trembling servant, the rigid guard, and the Queen Consort who wore a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The tray's golden dome sat open now, the steam from forbidden dish unraveling into the air like smoke from a warning signal. Shellfish, Catherine repeated softly, as if tasting the word in her mouth. Her voice remained calm, but something sharp flickered behind her usually warm eyes. James Reeves stood straighter. He expected denial, excuses, anything to soften the truth he had just spoken. Instead, he saw something else ripple through the princess's gaze. Understanding. Deep, immediate understanding. Because Kate Middleton was no stranger to palace politics. She recognized danger even when wrapped in silver. Who prepared this? Catherine asked quietly. The servant, still crying, couldn't answer. Her voice broke on every attempt. I don't know. I was told. She squeezed her eyes shut. I didn't want to get it wrong. I thought it was a special request. By whom? James pressed gently. Her eyes darted toward Camilla, quick, terrified, telling. Camilla stepped forward, elegant, composed, her pearls glimmering like frozen tears. Catherine, darling, she said with practiced softness, this was an innocent mistake. The kitchens must have mixed up dishes. These things happen. But Catherine's gaze was steady. Do they? Camilla blinked. For the first time, her expression faltered. James sensed a shift. The air felt electric, charged with something fragile and dangerous all at once. The princess stepped closer, her eyes never leaving Camilla's. It's strange, isn't it? She murmured. Everyone in this palace knows about my allergy. It's been noted for years. Camilla's smile stiffened. Allergies change. I've read. Mine hasn't, Catherine said simply. The servant let out a sob, so pitiful it shattered the false calm. Your Highness, Please? I didn't know. I have children. I thought. You're not at fault, Catherine said gently, turning to her. You were misled. The kindness, the steadiness. It broke something in the servant. She crumbled to her knees, shaking. James knelt immediately, supporting her elbow. It's all right. No one will harm you. Just tell the truth. But before she could speak, Camilla cut in sharply. This is enough. We are making a scene out of nothing. James looked up at her in disbelief. Your Majesty. But Catherine raised her hand, stopping him. She turned to the servant again. Your name? Maria, the woman choked. Maria Lopez. How long have you been working here? 3 months. Catherine nodded slowly. New enough to be influenced. Old enough to know a direct order when it's given. Maria looked at the floor, silent but visibly breaking. Camilla exhaled sharply, as if annoyed by the pressure. Catherine, let's not embarrass this poor woman further. A kitchen mistake. May I see the order slip? Catherine asked quietly. Maria froze. Camilla froze. James felt the entire hallway tighten. I didn't bring it, Maria whispered. James straightened. The slip is always attached to the tray until delivery. Maria broke again. She told me to remove it. Who? Catherine pressed, voice gentle but unwavering. The servant's lips trembled. Her eyes pleaded with the princess. Not for forgiveness, but for permission to speak the truth without losing her livelihood. Maria, Catherine murmured, you're safe. No one in this hallway will punish you for honesty. The woman inhaled shakily, then whispered name. Queen, Consort, Camilla. Camilla stiffened so violently her pearls shifted against her collar. This is outrageous, she snapped. She is lying. Catherine, you cannot possibly believe. But Catherine did not react with anger. She simply studied Camilla's face, watching every muscle, every flicker, every instinctive tightening. And in Camilla's eyes, something flickered. Not guilt, not fear. Resentment. Deep, simmering resentment. The kind that grows in shadows. Officer Reeves, Catherine said calmly. Please escort Maria somewhere she can sit down. And ask security to begin pulling hallway and kitchen footage of the past 48 hours. Camilla's face twisted. Absolutely not, she hissed. This is unnecessary. Catherine's voice didn't rise, but gained a sharpness no one dared challenge. My life was put at risk. I decide what's necessary. The corridor fell silent again. Maria was gently helped away by James, who guided her toward a bench near the staircase. Her sobs echoed faintly, mixing with the distant hum of palace activity. And now only 2 women remained facing one another, one calm, one cracking. You think I did this? Camilla whispered, stepping closer. You truly believe I would harm you? Catherine did not answer directly. Instead, she asked a single question. Why lobster? Camilla blinked, confused by the sudden shift, but Catherine pressed on. If this was a kitchen mistake, why would they prepare something I've never eaten at breakfast in my life? Why would they serve a dish the chefs know they are forbidden to cook for me? Why did they? Camilla opened her mouth, but no argument came. Catherine continued softly. Someone had to request it. Someone had to override the allergy file. Camilla's breath hitched just slightly, enough for Catherine to catch it. The princess leaned in, her voice so quiet only Camilla could hear. And someone wanted me alone when I opened that dome. Camilla's posture stiffened. Catherine's eyes softened, not with sympathy, but with weary disappointment. This could have killed me, Catherine said, voice thick with the weight of the truth. And if Officer Reeves hadn't stopped the tray, she swallowed, my children would have woken up without a mother. Camilla shut her eyes for a moment, a flicker of something between frustration and fear crossing her face. Then Catherine straightened, drawing a breath that steadied her. This conversation isn't over, she said. Not by a long shot. But the next part must happen with His Majesty. Camilla's eyes flew open. Charles, you're going to drag him into this? Catherine, think of the scandal. I'm thinking of the fact that someone in this palace tried to harm me, Catherine replied. If not physically, then politically. Either way, The king must be told. Camilla's voice cracked. "Catherine, please." But Catherine turned away. Her decision was final. "Officer Reeves," she called gently. James returned instantly, standing tall. "Please escort the Queen Consort and me to the king's private study." "Yes, Your Highness." Camilla's expression turned icy, a mix of panic, simmering jealousy, and a fear she couldn't mask. And as the three of them walked down the long royal corridor, the palace itself seemed to hold its breath, because the forbidden meal hadn't just been a dangerous breakfast. It was a spark, and the fire was about to reach the throne room. King Charles's private study had always felt like another world inside the palace. Quiet, dignified, heavy with history. The thick carpet muted every step. The tall bookshelves towered like silent judges, and the grand windows poured in beams of pale morning light. But on this particular day, the room felt smaller, tighter, like even the walls were bracing for what was about to unfold. Officer James Reeves opened the door, stepping aside for Princess Catherine and Queen Consort Camilla to enter. Catherine walked in first, her expression controlled, her movements graceful but charged with tension. Behind her, Camilla followed, her shoulders tense, fingers curled into her palms, eyes already darting toward Charles as if begging for protection. Charles looked up from his desk. His face softened when he saw Catherine, then tightened when he saw Camilla. "What's happened?" he asked, rising slowly. His voice was steady, but the worry underneath was immediate and unmistakable. Catherine didn't waste a second. She didn't dramatize. She didn't accuse. She simply stated, clearly and calmly, "A tray containing lobster was brought to my private quarters this morning. Officer Reeves stopped it. He found the dish before it reached me." Charles blinked. "Lobster? But your allergy file was ignored," Catherine finished gently. Camilla exhaled sharply. "Charles, this is being blown out of proportion. A kitchen mistake." "Is that true?" Charles asked, eyes narrowing slightly. Catherine stepped forward. There was no order slip attached. The servant assigned to deliver the tray said she was told to remove it. She glanced toward the hallway, where Maria waited with other guards, and she claimed Queen Camilla personally told her I had developed a taste for shellfish and that the files were outdated. Camilla snapped, "She's lying? Catherine, surely you understand how staff can twist things." "Maria has no reason to lie," Catherine replied quietly. She was terrified enough that she almost couldn't speak. The room charged immediately, as if someone had cut through a live wire. Charles looked at his wife slowly. "Camilla, did you ask the kitchen to prepare lobster?" Camilla hesitated, a hesitation so brief, so small, that another person might have missed it. But Catherine saw it, James saw it, and Charles definitely saw it. "I may have mentioned," Camilla said finally, "that you enjoy finer dishes. I might have said you deserve something special, but I never intended any harm." Catherine stared at her, stunned by the framing. "But you know about my allergy," she said. "You sat beside me at dinner when I had a reaction from cross-contamination. That was years ago," Camilla said quickly, "and allergies do not disappear overnight." Camilla looked away. Her lips trembled, just slightly. James watched both women carefully. He was not meant to be in this room, not for conversations like this, but Catherine had insisted he stay. So he stood silently near the door, observing the unraveling of royal composure. Charles sank into his chair, rubbing his temples. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Why would the kitchen do this? Why would anyone override a medical warning?" Catherine leveled her gaze on Camilla. "I believe we both know who had the authority." Camilla's voice cracked. "You think I would poison you?" "I think you wanted to send a message," Catherine said softly. "Maybe not to harm me, but to remind me of my place, or perhaps to shake me. But it went too far." Camilla's eyes filled with heat, not sorrow, but something closer to humiliation. "Everyone thinks you are perfect," she hissed under her breath. "You walk into a room and the public lights up. They compare us, every day, every moment. Do you know what it's like? To spend your life fighting to be seen, only to be overshadowed by someone half your age." Catherine didn't flinch. Her voice remained steady. "I did not ask for popularity, and I certainly did not ask for a rivalry. Yet you have won," Camilla whispered bitterly. Charles stood so quickly his chair scraped the floor. "Enough!" he snapped, a rare display of anger. "Camilla!" Catherine nearly died. "Do you understand that? One bite, one mistake, and William would be a widower. My grandchildren would lose their mother." Camilla closed her eyes. "I never wanted that. But you allowed your jealousy to blur your judgment," Charles said quietly, his voice trembling. "And that is unforgivable." The word struck the room like a blow. Catherine looked away, swallowing the weight of everything unsaid. Charles took a deep breath, trying to steady himself before speaking again. "Camilla, from this moment forward, you are no longer permitted to give instructions to staff without oversight. You will have no access to dietary schedules or personal files, and all interactions involving Catherine or the children will be supervised by security." Camilla's face crumpled. "Charles, this is non-negotiable," he said, voice heavy with finality. The silence that followed was devastating. Camilla's shoulders sagged, partly with anger, partly with humiliation, partly with the reality of what she had done. She looked at Catherine, but the younger woman's expression held nothing sharp or triumphant, only tired disappointment. "Catherine," Charles said gently, turning to her, "are you all right?" Catherine nodded, shaken, but unharmed, thanks to Officer Reeves. Charles looked at James. "You have my gratitude," he said solemnly, "and you will be commended for your vigilance." James bowed his head. "Just doing my duty, Your Majesty." Camilla's voice came out strangled. "So that's it? I'm to be treated like some criminal?" "No," Catherine said softly. "You're being treated like someone who made a choice that endangered another person's life." Camilla glared. "You think you're so controlled, so gracious. You're not perfect, Catherine." "No," Catherine agreed, "but I don't gamble with people's lives." Something in Camilla's expression faltered, something deep and wounded, before she turned away. Charles gestured to the door. "Camilla, please. Wait outside." She hesitated, then stepped out of the room, her heels echoing like a fading storm. Once she was gone, Charles exhaled a breath that sounded like a man letting go of years of strain. "Catherine, I am deeply sorry. You should never have been put in danger by someone inside this family." Catherine's voice softened. "We must handle this carefully. For William, for the children, for the monarchy." "Yes," Charles said, "but first we must protect you." He paused and looked at James. "And we must protect the man who protected her." James stood at attention, but inside, the words struck deep. The king turned back to Catherine. "This cannot happen again. Do you understand?" Catherine nodded. "I understand." But she knew, as she exchanged a quiet, heavy glance with James, that this was only the beginning, because harm from outside the palace was expected. Harm from inside? That changed everything. 3 weeks had slipped by, but Buckingham Palace had not fully recovered from that dangerous morning. The corridors still shone, the chandeliers still glittered, and the palace staff still moved with quiet efficiency, yet beneath the polished surface, something unspoken pulsed like a heartbeat everyone could feel, but no one dared acknowledge. The incident had not been leaked to the public in its true form. Instead, the official story described a serious protocol breach involving food safety. But inside the palace, whispers traveled with their own speed. Staff members exchanged careful looks. Steps paused when certain names were mentioned, and Catherine felt eyes lingering on her not out of admiration, but out of concern. The royal household was learning, painfully, that danger did not always come from crowds or foreign threats. Sometimes it came from family. Princess Catherine felt the difference most sharply. She walked gracefully as ever, smiled warmly when needed, but something within her had changed. She moved with new layer of caution, aware of who prepared her meals, who stepped inside her rooms, who lingered a little too long in silence. Trauma in the palace never announced itself. It arrived in subtle echoes. Yet Catherine did not retreat from her duties. If anything, she stepped forward with a stronger presence. She visited charities, met families, spoke to mothers, attended engagements with heartfelt sincerity. The public saw a woman who was glowing with purpose. But only those inside the palace saw the steel underneath. William saw it most clearly. His fury had been volcanic when he learned what had happened. Loud, raw, filled with protective instinct that stunned even his father. He had demanded Camilla be removed from all public work, stripped of privileges, and kept as far away from his family as possible. Only Catherine's steady hand on his arm had calmed him enough to hear Charles's fragile compromise. Now, when William looked at his wife during quiet evenings, he saw the strength it took for her to continue trusting a family that had nearly betrayed her. He admired her more for it, but a protective shadow followed him everywhere. He was never far from her now, not after that morning. Camilla, meanwhile, had withdrawn into a private world that felt more like exile. Her once busy schedule was reduced dramatically. Public appearances were limited. Staff no longer came to her for approval on anything related to Catherine or the Wales children. Her influence had shrunk, and the palace walls that once felt like a kingdom now felt more like boundaries. And inside those boundaries, guilt lived like a restless ghost. Camilla replayed her decision 1,000 times each night. At first, she told herself it was a misunderstanding. Then she tried to convince herself she never meant harm. But the truth she dared not say aloud, was that jealousy had pushed her down a dark path she never imagined she'd walk. She had wanted to unsettle Catherine, to knock her down a little, to reclaim a fraction of the attention she felt slipping away. She had not intended death, but she had intended disruption, and the line between those two things was thinner than she'd allowed herself to believe. Each morning, she looked out the window at the palace gardens and wondered how she had become this version of herself, a woman overshadowed, insecure, and capable of something so reckless. She feared facing Charles, who now looked at her with a kind of quiet disappointment that pierced deeper than anger, and she feared facing Catherine most of all. Catherine, who had shown no spite, no triumph, no public rebuke. Catherine, who moved through the palace with kindness toward every member of staff, including Maria, the servant who had unknowingly delivered the dangerous meal. Catherine, whose compassion made Camilla feel smaller, meaner, weaker. One evening, Camilla stood alone in her room when she heard footsteps stop outside her door. Charles entered, closing it gently behind him. "Are you better today?" he asked carefully. "Yes," she lied. He nodded, but he didn't believe it. "Catherine asked about you earlier." Camilla winced. Why would she? "Because she is who she is," Charles replied softly. Camilla looked away. Shame pressed down on her shoulders like a weight she could no longer carry. "I don't know if she will ever forgive me." "Forgiveness isn't owed," Charles said, "only earned." He touched her shoulder briefly, not as a king, not as a reprimand, but as a man who still cared, even if the trust between them had cracked. Meanwhile, Maria, the terrified servant caught in the middle, had been quietly reassigned to a new role far from the kitchens. Catherine insisted she receive support rather than punishment, despite objections from some senior staff. Maria wrote the princess a handwritten letter filled with gratitude and guilt, her words shaking on the page. She wrote that she prayed every night for the courage she lacked that morning. Catherine kept the letter inside her private desk drawer. But the person most affected, aside from Catherine herself, was Officer James Reeves. His life had changed overnight. He had been commended by the king, protected by the princess, respected by colleagues who once saw him as just another uniform in a palace of hundreds. But not everyone appreciated his actions. Some senior staff whispered that he crossed lines, embarrassed the Queen Consort, disrupted the delicate balance of royal politics. But James did not regret a single decision he had made. One crisp morning not long after the incident, he stood on duty near the portrait-lined gallery when he noticed Princess Catherine walking toward him. Alone, he straightened immediately. "Your Royal Highness." "James," she said softly, "walk with me." Her voice was the same calm tone she used with anxious mothers and frightened children. They walked in the quiet gallery, passing centuries of kings and queens watching from their gilded frames. "I've been thinking a great deal about what happened," Catherine began. And I wanted to speak to you without staff, without cameras, without anyone listening. James waited, unsure what she would say. You didn't save my life by accident, she said. You saved it because you paid attention when no one else did, because you trusted your instincts, because you chose to protect someone who had no idea she was in danger. James swallowed. It was my duty, ma'am. It was more than duty, Catherine said gently. It was courage. She stopped walking and turned to look at him fully. If you ever feel unsafe, unheard, or unsupported in this palace, you come to me. Do you understand? James nodded, but his throat was tight. Yes, Your Highness. She smiled, a soft, genuine smile that held gratitude deeper than words. Then she continued down the hall, leaving James standing in the gallery surrounded by portraits of those who came before, kings, queens, soldiers, legends. And he wondered, for the first time, if his moment among them had already begun. Buckingham Palace returned to its rhythms. The world outside continued, as if nothing had happened. Tourists gathered at the gates. Guards changed shifts. The monarchy went on. But inside the palace walls, something had changed forever. Trust had been broken. Loyalty had been tested. And a single breakfast tray had revealed just how fragile power could be when jealousy lurked behind royal doors. The crown still shone, but the people beneath, it would never be the same.